Welcome to the CXM Experience. It's our Monday show. And today we have Neha, the Breath Yogi. All right. Do you like our new intro music, Neha? What do you think? Pretty cool,
I
right?
love it.
Very
Got
mellow.
like the whole
Okay.
vibe
Very
going.
mellow. Very mellow. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
good choice.
All right. Okay. So let's get into this discussion. So what I wanted to do today is this is a whole brand new segment. We had an amazing segment with you last week where you gave us your background and your story, and I got to tell you, I got some amazing reactions from people, and I want to thank you for being so transparent and open and sharing so much. It means a lot to people because it makes it very easy for others to identify with you when they know your journey, and we always tend to not understand other people's journeys that much. It's very easy to forget that we're all on difficult journeys. And so that was an amazing experience for me and for many of the people listening to the CXM experience. And so, experience is not just about buying stuff online, right? Experience is about the whole kind of panoply of all the different things that you do in life and all the different ways you do it. And I want to talk a little bit today about the experience of breathing, of being present, and of mindfulness. And these are all things that have become very popular topics in the corporate world and in the personal world, particularly in the last decade and especially in the last few years. And I'd say very critically in the last year. So I want to tell you my own story for a sec, if you don't mind, just kind of how
Sure.
I got into it, and then I want to. I know you've got some very strong points of view on breathing, and just could we just breathe properly would be sort of the selling line on that one, and then we'll get into a little bit about how to start thinking about that, and we're going to do some exercises together, and then we're going to go from there. So I have been sort of off and on meditating for probably about 22, 23 years. And I started it in the late 90s and a period of my life that was extremely chaotic. I had two very small children. My wife at the time was very busy with some stuff in her career. I was running a startup. It was lots of terrifying moments, as there are always in any startup. And there was just a lot going on, and I started to kind of felt like Stack Overflow. It was just the cup was full and liquid kept pouring into it, and so I ended up I saw a bunch of my friends because there was a group of us all kind of similar vintage, all going through pretty similar things. Like it was not, I wasn't like suffering from anything unusual, and a lot of them were turning to antidepressants. And Paxil was a really big one at the time. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. I guess Xanax was starting to come on the scene, and a bunch of other these things. And all these friends of mine were all essentially kind of drugging themselves all the time. And I really didn't want to go down that path. And again, a couple of my friends became, raging alcoholics, which is not a particularly good way to go either. Hey, I'm not judging. I'm just saying that wasn't for me. And so I just like, there's got to be a better way. And that's where I started getting into meditation. And I would say I was like okay at it for a while. And I did find that breathing helped me a lot in moments of stress. And the thing that was maybe most powerful for me was understanding the physical reality of panic attacks. And that essentially the way it was taught to me is that you sense danger, and we're trained obviously to sense danger from a primitive stage. So it's like a large animal is chasing you is kind of the brain's sort of limbic response, right? But we sense danger in that there's business danger or there's stress on I'm going to be presenting danger or whatever, and then we start to breathe more because we're trying to get more oxygen in our system because we're getting ready to run or fight. But probably run. But most people are runners. Occasionally some are fighters, but most are people are runners. So that's why you get that tingling feeling in your extremities because blood is being pulled into the major organs and you start to accelerate your breathing. And what essentially happens is you essentially start to hyperventilate. And then you create an over-oxygenation in your blood. And that once your blood is over-oxygenated, it releases adrenaline. And adrenaline lasts 20 minutes. And once that adrenaline release happens, there's nothing you can do. You just got to ride that pony all the way into town and you just got to get through it. But once you sort of understand all these sort of functions and what's going on, it became a little easier to go, oh, okay, that's the adrenaline going in. I'm just going to have to like just deal with that. And I was doing a lot of speaking and a lot of presentations. And occasionally I would get up there and be like, ah, damn, this is going to be a really awkward and uncomfortable presentation. But, I'll get through it because I learned that if you can control your breathing and stop hyperventilating, you create a more balanced oxygenation and your pH balances, and then you won't have a second adrenaline release and you don't kind of cascade. So that's kind of like my sort of technical look at it. It didn't get really good for me, so I worked at it and worked at it for years, and I'd say I got to a
Mm,
point where I was always able to manage any issue, but just it always work. And then I learned to dive. So my youngest daughter is a marine biologist, and she wanted to learn to dive pretty young. She got her PADI card when she was 12, and then so I went through classes with her, and then learned to dive and got my PADI card not too long after she did. And when I was being taught to dive, one of the worst things that can happen to you diving is having a panic attack under the water
yeah.
for obvious
Mhm.
reasons. Okay. And so
Yeah.
I don't need to explain
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff going on when you're under the water. There's an element of claustrophobia because you're like literally under the water and you look up and you sometimes can see the ocean top, but 30, 50 feet, it's pretty down there. Number two, there are dangers underwater. So you're being surprised by things that can be hazardous. And then number three, you're breathing very unusually because you're breathing into it with a tank. And then you're breathing out through a regulator with these bubbles. And so the instructor's like, if there's one thing that you do well in diving, you've got to breathe properly. You literally can die. You can kill yourself if you're not breathing properly. And so the technique of breathing is you breathe in three.
Mhm.
Three in. I notice you do this you do slightly different numbers, but three in, and then you breathe out five.
Mm.
If you breathe in three and you breathe out five, you can never hyperventilate because you're always expelling more, it's theoretically expelling more than you're bringing in. Obviously, it's not quite true, but that's the way you sort of mentally sort of frame it. So whenever I meditate, whenever you see me meditating with you, what I'm doing is I'm actually doing 3 and 5, and I'm imagining myself underwater. Which I would also say that diving is the most meditative thing I've ever done. And once I started diving and started being able to like be at the bottom of the ocean, that suddenly created for me a place of peace and rest and sort of a happy place that I could always go back to. And so I can switch that on in 10 seconds and go there really quick. And that was a huge breakthrough for me. So when I started working with you, I noticed you were kind of doing the same idea, which is breathe in less than you breathe out. And so I know you're sort of working on the same thing, but I wanted to share that with you. You can react or not react to it. You can tell me that's the craziest thing I've ever heard, or you can say, "Oh, that's interesting." You know, it's if you really hate it, I'll edit it out.
No, no, no. First of all, I love the ocean. I feel like uh, some of my most lucid and like deep moments have also been
Hmm,
on the ocean. I just like love it. And somehow I always find myself like Greece is one of my favorite destinations. Like I
hmm.
could like they have a like it's just something about the ocean is so energizing, deeply energizing, and it's just calming. And if you're underwater, the noise sort of just fizzles away. And so I relate to that. Like when you go, like when you find your meditative space underwater, I hear you. Like that's true for me too, but above and inside water. But a few things, and we talked about my journey, right? And it pertains to that because all of that I went through forced me to find a logical explanation and not really like a woo woo, so to speak.
Yeah,
So I've had to kind of like, I've almost had to have like a scientific approach to all of the things that I've finally come to say, okay, this is working.
right.
So I was like, okay, forget about spirituality, forget about religion, forget about meditation, because I don't think people really understand what meditation is. And, like one day I will meet the maker of Headspace, and I'm so glad that he did what he did. And because a lot of credit goes to them for like, apps like Headspace and Calm that have made meditations and mindfulness mainstream,
Hmm,
but you don't know what you don't know, right? It's a lot of folks are doing mindfulness and they think they're doing meditation. And
Interesting. Interesting.
and
Huh.
and mindfulness, by the very definition of mindfulness, is you have to put effort. Okay, so I meet people on a daily basis. They'll come and be like, okay, I tried the app, and the moment I close my eyes, my mind's getting bombarded with a million thoughts.
Right,
Okay,
right,
and I can't do it. Like, it's so hard. Like, grad, I've been on trainings. Okay, this is a person who's committed to teaching people who can't keep their eyes closed for 1 minute because they're thinking they're doing meditation, but what they're really doing is mindfulness. So I
interesting.
love it that everybody wants to meditate, but maybe there's, like, the details have got lost. So I was like, okay, this is too confusing. It's hard to explain everyone. Then let's just like do the basic, and the thing that is keeping us alive. What's the difference between a dead person and then a person who's alive? Is the person who's alive is breathing. It can't be more simple than that.
Yeah,
Like,
because the dead people are voting, so they're all basically that's the same. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I just from our QAnon episode, but in case I keep going. Yeah, so dead alive, the
the
dead
dead
aren't
people.
breathing. I get that.
Okay,
That makes sense. Yeah.
the voting is a separate conversation, but uh, they could vote probably, but they're definitely not breathing, right?
Yeah, that's right. Just
Yeah.
because you're not breathing doesn't mean you can't vote, for God's sakes. Get out there, everybody.
Okay, I don't know if I would lead with that, but the point is, if you are alive, you're breathing. That's how fundamental breathing is to our life.
It's
Okay,
a good point. You're right. Like when you stop breathing is essentially when life stops. That's that moment.
exactly.
Right.
And I'm fascinated. The person who won the Nobel Prize for medical medicine in 2017, they discovered biorhythms. In 2017, the Nobel Prize for medicine went to somebody who discovered different biorhythms. And the science of yoga and Ayurveda has been professing the use of biorhythms since
Interesting.
6,000 years ago.
Wow.
So,
Like my
uh,
parents in the 70s had this plastic device that was like a biorhythm machine. And they used to like, I can't remember what they were doing with it, but every day they would check their biorhythm. It was like a real mid 70s kind of like thing, but that's interesting. I did not know that about the Nobel Prize. That is very cool.
so yeah, so the point that I'm trying to make is, as I was trying to figure out, like, why am I on this planet? Like, why, like, my life is not normal from any angle. What's the purpose of me being on this planet? And I realized that it's to bring the ancient knowledge forth in a way that's accessible to people. Okay, that's accessible to every human being, irrespective of their background, their culture, their race, their beliefs. And that's how I landed on the breath, because if you're a human and you're alive, you're breathing. And if you look deeply into it, what's the first thing a baby does when they're born?
Start crying.
Even before they cry, they breathe in and
Yeah, because they
then they
haven't had
start
to breathe.
crying.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Interesting.
And the last thing you're going to do as you leave this planet is you're going to breathe out. So, this whole phenomena we call life
Hmm.
is between the first breath in and the last breath out.
Wow, that's deep.
It's deep. It's deep. It's intense,
Oh my
right?
God.
I thought,
This is maybe
I'm
a bit
sorry,
much for a Monday morning, but
maybe
okay, keep going. I get you. No,
you can edit it, okay?
no, no, no. I'm not taking that out. That's awesome. We don't edit this show. But
Okay.
and you're right. Even just the concept of your last breath is a well understood concept. Taking your last breath, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, great point. Yeah.
So my point is, like, just keep it simple, okay? Let's make it simple. Let's not make it any complicated. If you can breathe, and now, like, I mean, I beg to kind of like, there was a little bit of a, when, as you were talking about the science of it, actually, when you breathe deeply, you stimulate your vagus nerve. The vagus nerve stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, which then kicks in with the rest and digest response. And the opposite of it is what you were talking about, the flight and fight. But actually, what is happening in the fight and flight is the blood is not going to the major organs, it's being taken away from the major organs and into your extremities.
Oh, interesting.
So, the first thing that happens when you're under fight and flight is your immune system gets suppressed, your sex hormone production gets suppressed, your like blood is pulled from everybody just gets the minimum supply, and most of it goes towards the extremities because you need all that energy you can in your
To
limbs to
run.
run away.
Okay.
So that is why stress is the underlying cause of chronic diseases today. We all know that, right? Like immune system dysfunction is a major cause of a lot of the diseases because a lot of people are stressed, and when you're under stress, your immune function gets suppressed. Okay, so if you can breathe better, you can stimulate your vagus nerve, and over time strengthen that response, and then you can calm down with the rest and digest, and then the blood gets circulated better, and you can come you can improve your immunity and all of that. So even physiologically, even for folks who are not interested in the deep philosophical aspect of it, if you're alive, you're breathing. And somehow we like complicated things, and
Mm.
we kind of like, we want to know the most complex thing. But if we can just get the basics right, we'd be far, like, I wish there was this class in every college and every school that taught people the importance of breathing. Like,
Wow. That's interesting. Huh. Like, 'cause people are trying to advocate for, like, financial training, like, how to balance your checkbook and stuff like that, but you're saying breathing is just so fundamental. Because I guess your basic point is people aren't generally breathing properly.
no, I mean, on an average, a human being is barely using 30% of their lung capacity.
Wow.
And 60% of our energy requirement is met. Like, how do the cells make, like, give you energy? On a cellular level, oxygen is required for cellular respiration. 70%, almost 60 to 70% of our body's toxins are excreted through the breath. If you want to lose weight, if you want to lose 10 kgs of weight, about 8 to 8.5 kgs is you have to breathe it out because fat gets metabolized into carbon dioxide and
Wow.
and has to be like you have to breathe it out. And now can you imagine, like, and I'm not trying to judge anyone, but there are different methods of, like, there's the allopathic system, the Western medicine, and then there's the Eastern medicine. And the Western medicine is great. You need it. My father's a doctor. My brother's a surgeon. My mother was a doctor. So we have a hospital, okay? It's really good for acute. You got a carcinoma, you got to get it operated, right? You're having a headache, here's a medicine. But it doesn't go into the root cause of why did that imbalance even happen in the first place.
Mm.
It's only now that we're talking about mental health and emotional health, whereas the other approaches have always looked at human beings as a combination of physical, mental, and emotional health. Because our emotions determine the whole endocrine balance in our body, which determine how the physiology is going to behave.
That's great. So so I'm just gonna throw this idea out there. You can take this
Yeah.
for free. Like, I don't even want, like, I don't want
Yeah. I feel like
royalties or anything, okay? So I'm just saying
okay.
"Breathe Your Way to Weight Loss" would be a killer title. I mean, honestly, I mean, if you could get people to start breathing as a way of being able to get their weight under control, I think that would fly off the shelves. And I can get you on Dr. Oz, because I know him pretty well, and he'd love that. This is great Dr. Oz material as well.
Okay, so there's a few things. Okay, you do have to exercise because if you just
Oh,
eat great,
darn, you're
no,
ruining it
no,
now.
no, 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 but here's the deal. No, because if you overbreathe, then you can get dizzy. You don't want to do that to yourself, right?
Yeah, okay,
So
good, good, okay.
what happens
All
when you
good things can be overdone. I
yes,
get that one,
yeah,
yeah.
so when you're exercising, then the the muscles are producing more carbon dioxide, and that's what leads to more weight loss. But you have to understand that there's a very deep emotional component to weight loss as well, right? And that's why a lot of people have a tendency to gain weight when they're going through hard things in life. There is a huge connection between the state of your mind, your eating, and like I'm one of those people. I gain weight when I'm going through a rough phase, you know? So I think if you can breathe better, absolutely, it's going to help you mentally, emotionally, physically. And even if you're not spiritual, even if you're not like religious, you're a human being, you're alive. If you can just breathe better, you can energize every single cell. And I think fundamentally, we have to understand that every organ in our body is just trying to keep us alive.
Hmm.
Okay. The body is working 24/7 to give us an optimal experience. So even when people develop disease states, even things like cancer, they're like, okay, you're not freaking breathing well. You don't have enough. There's some chemical imbalance here. Okay, so these cells are not needed anymore. They're just taking up energy. So on a very, very fundamental level, the body is trying to preserve itself and work for us in the most efficient way we can.
Hmm.
And if we can just breathe better, the blood becomes less viscous, the heart has to work less,
Hmm.
you will feel more energized, you'll feel lighter. And I think that's where there's a slight difference because this is also a question that I've been pondering about. And we'll just take one example, like Michael Phelps, right? I think he has the biggest lung capacity there can be humanly possible, right? And kudos to him for being the champion for Talkspace, right? Like the therapy app. He's been so open about
Very
it,
brave. Very brave. Yeah.
very brave, and it's something that a lot of athletes struggle with. And I was like, okay, if it was just about lung capacity and there's no one breathing more deeply than him, probably, right? Like he's got a big lung capacity, absolutely. So why is it not what's going on the mental basis? Because if deep breathing is stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system, then he should be feeling better. And that's where I felt like the yogic science, they figure it's about the rhythm in the breath. It's about those biorhythms, and it's about getting your mind in sync with the right rhythm.
Hmm. Well,
Okay.
that is very cool. And what I'm gonna do today is let's take about 5 minutes.
Hmm.
And I know that this by the way, this background is fantastic. And so we'll in the next week's Monday show, we'll have the same thing. We'll kind of maybe get into some of the biorhythm stuff. I think that's super interesting to me. But what I'd like to be able to do is like, what's a good kind of old fashioned sort of meat and potatoes, basic breathing exercise? What when you're starting someone, you meet someone, you can tell that they're a little bit, maybe not breathing properly, etc. What's the way do you get them to start breathing properly? How do you coach them up?
So there are two things. The first is I'd love for them to do a quick test. Okay, what's happening when they're breathing in? Is the stomach expanding, or is it contracting? So we want to make sure that they're breathing correctly. When you're
Hmm.
breathing correctly, basically the air is coming into your lungs, the diaphragm is getting pushed down, which pushes the stomach out. Okay, so every time you're breathing in, okay, why don't we do it? Why don't we just do it? Brace your
Let's do
right
it. Yeah.
arm.
Not everybody's comfortable with that stomach out thing, by the way. That throws a lot of people. Like I know it's like
I mean, it
people don't
doesn't
like that
have
very
to be
much.
so dramatic, but it's the
I'm just
natural
saying,
way. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I've
Yeah, no, I've run into this before. We were doing something in one of our corporate retreats, and
uh-huh.
it was like a lot of people didn't want to like do that because they're like doing everything they could to hold their stomach in. So,
Mm,
which may
mm.
be one of the reasons why people aren't breathing properly because they're like, kind of holding themselves
Contracting.
together all the time, right? So,
I mean, and I don't make them push their stomachs out. This is just a test. We want to see what's going on with you. And then we'll do something very basic. One is called diaphragmatic breathing, and the other thing is called 16-second breath. The 16-second breath is my
okay,
favorite. It's
right.
like 16 seconds, and it's going to get you off to a good start.
Okay, let's get going. I'm
Okay,
ready to
so
go. Okay.
so let's place the right palm on the stomach and left palm on the chest and just sit easily and comfortably. And now just bring your attention to your breath and just notice what's happening. Just become aware of your breath. What's happening as you're breathing in? Notice, is your
Okay.
stomach
Yeah. I
expanding? Is
feel
your
like it's
chest
mostly
expanding?
chest for me right now.
Hmm.
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 Interesting. Hmm.
Okay. And now place your palms on the sides of your ribs, like on the sides of your lower ribs, the last three
Yeah.
ribs.
Right.
And now just breathe and notice if you're registering any movement, not
Interesting. And
so
I'm not
much.
moving those enough. Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So I'm kind
that's
of doing a
pretty normal.
shallow, sort of thin breath in the
Yes.
middle. I'm not really
So it's like you're like you're breathing very shallow
interesting.
right now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah? And relax. So we just want to quickly gauge where we are so that we can then monitor our progress. And I'll give you a little secret. The key to breathing better is if you can exhale well, the inhalation. So if you're exhaling properly, now there's a vacuum in your lungs, the inhalation will just automatically happen.
Okay. That
Okay.
seems, yeah, good tip. Okay.
So the key to breathing well is exhaling well. Okay. And you want to exhale for a little longer than we're inhaling. And we'll talk a little bit more about all of that. Like, I don't want to go into too much of that detail, but for this time, exhale for a little longer than you're inhaling. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the 16-second breath we're going to do
Yeah.
here.
We're going to do
Okay.
the 16-second
Okay.
breath
Ready to
now.
go. Okay.
You can, and place your palms open to the ceiling. Okay.
Okay. Got it.
And relax the body. And now on my count through the nose, breathe in, two, three, four, till your collarbones lift up. Hold the breath in, two, three, four. Breathe out. Just pull your navel in, make your waist tiny. Breathe out for a little longer. Hold, two. Breathe in, two, three, four. Hold, two, three, four. Breathe out, two, three, four, five, six. Hold the breath out, two. Breathe in, two, three, four. Hold, two, three, four. Breathe out, two, three, four, five, six. Hold the breath out, two. Breathe in, let the air fill your belly. Breathe into the chest. Hold, two, three, four. Breathe out. Pull the navel in towards the spine. Breathe out for a little longer. Hold, two. Last four rounds. Breathe in, two, three, four. Hold, two, three, four. Breathe out, two, three, four, five, six. Hold, two. Breathe in. Let the air fill your belly. Breathe into the chest. Hold, two, three, four. Breathe out. Pull the navel in. Breathe out for a little longer. Squeeze the air out. Hold, two. Last two. Breathe in, two, three, four. Hold, two, three, four. Breathe out, two, three, four, five, six. Hold, two. Last one. Breathe in. Let the air fill your belly. Breathe into the chest till your collarbones lift up. Hold for the same amount of time. Then, as you breathe out, pull the navel in. Breathe out for a little longer. Hold the breath out, two, and relax. Just keep your eyes closed for a microsecond. And now become aware of the state of your mind and the rhythm in your breath. Then you can slowly open the eyes when you're ready.
Wow. That's so awesome. You're so
Huh?
great. It's my favorite thing. People don't know this, but every Tuesday, Neha actually does this exercise a little bit longer. Some other things you do as well with our executive leadership team at Sprinkler. And I think it's one of the reasons why we've been able to have such productive meetings over the last, was it a couple of years, I think, since you started. It's been amazing. So
I hear
that
that.
was fantastic. So for next week, we're going to do this again, and then we'll start
Yeah.
digging in a little bit deeper on this breathing stuff. Everyone start thinking about breathing as being a way of making your life better and making your physical life better. And Neha, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm really looking forward to having you as our regular Monday kickoff guest. It's going to be awesome.
Thank you, Grad, for like I really appreciate you providing this platform because like I hope we can reach more people and everybody could breathe better, right? Like
Yeah, sounds like we could solve a lot of world problems.
yeah, we can just get people to breathe better. So thank
All
you.
right.
So fun
Okay. Well,
chatting with
thank
you.
you. I'll see you next week for the CXM experience. This is Grad Khan, CXO, Chief Experience Officer at Sprinkler, and Neha, the Breath Yogi. And we will see you next time.